Hey guys, what's up? It's Missy, and we are back on the Rebel. It has been a minute since we have ridden on the roads here. So right now, we are just getting some food, some lunch, because I haven't had a lick of food today, but that's normal for me. Uh-oh, that sucks. I was actually on my way to a bike store yesterday in my car. I got off work early, so I was heading over to grab some fork oil because the fork seals on my dirt bike are leaking. So I was just driving, as I do, and witnessed an accident. It was a bummer. I'll show the clip here, but basically this Tesla put their left blinker on and then started turning right, and the guy that was behind him thought he was turning left, as indicated by his blinker, so he was trying to maneuver around him to the right, and they ended up getting in an accident. I'm not an insurance adjuster, but it would probably end up being like a 50-50 because the Tesla was indicating to go left but turned right, but at the same time there could be an argument that the car shouldn't have tried to pass the Tesla. That's a reason, one of the reasons why I have a dash cam. Speaking of the dirt bike, so that thing needs quite a bit of work. If you watched my last video, you saw that I took it out for the very first time and crashed twice. That was fun. So my fork seals are leaking, like, really bad. So I have to clean those. I'm gonna try to clean them instead of replace them to see if that fixes my problem. But then my counter shaft seal is leaking, so I have to replace that. And then one of my rear wheel bearings is completely shot, so I need to replace that. So that's fun. I actually have 2 spare rear wheels, so I could technically probably just put one of those on and the wheel bearing might be fine in them, but I bought a wheel bearing kit just in case. For sure I need to do the counter shaft seal, and like I said, I'm hopeful that I can just clean the fork seals and not have to replace them, because I don't want to do that. But we are about to go get some lunch, and I am hungry. It's a little bit warm today. It's been pretty cool. It's been pretty cool out, like in the low 70s. But today it's not bad. It's definitely warmer. Yesterday was my birthday. Obviously by the time you guys see this video, it's gonna be several days past, but I am, in fact, a November baby. So I'll give you some kind of like insights of my thought process from writing this past weekend, because I didn't really talk a lot about like my entire mental state when I was riding my dirt bike, and I'm really bummed that I didn't record much of anything on my DJI camera. But anyways, so within quite literally 5 minutes of me on this bike for the first time, like outside of my neighborhood, I crashed. And it was actually a pretty big crash. I've crashed so many times on my old bike, so I'm no stranger to crashing. However, it was my first crash with a new bike, obviously brand new plastics and graphics. Those are completely messed up now. But I like straight up face planted into the dirt. Like my helmet is scratched up, and I've never actually like crash to the point where I damaged my helmet. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I slammed my head on the ground or anything. Like, it's literally just a scratch on the chin bar. But I honestly sat there and like thought to myself, like, what am I getting myself into? Like, did I make a mistake in upgrading to a bigger bike? And I genuinely thought that I had made a mistake and that I didn't belong on this bike. And so we went out with friends, as I stated in my last video, and he brought out an XR100, which is basically the same bike that I used to have, just an older style. And he put a big bore kit in it, so it's a little bit bigger than 100 cc's. I forget exactly how many it is now. And so I told Chris, like, I don't know if there's something wrong with my bike or if I'm in over my head, but like, I can't ride this. And so he was riding the XR, and he let me ride it to kind of just get back in the feel of riding a bike that I'm familiar with. So I rode the XR for a little bit while he rode my bike to make sure that everything was actually like dialed in. So he got off my bike and he said it's fine. He did let a little bit of air out of the tire. And so I got back on it, and then I fell again within not even a minute of getting back on. And so I felt very defeated, and we came back to camp, and I was trying to be a little positive about it at least, but I was really second guessing my choice in bike. Chris adjusted the power valve, because we read online these newer KTMs have a power valve which adjusts how smooth the throttle sensitivity is. Chris adjusted that to make it smoother, because that was my problem, was the throttle was so much more sensitive than I'm used to on like this bike or my old dirt bike. I didn't ride for the rest of the day. I just wasn't feeling it. And the following morning I decided to ride it before breakfast, and so that's what I did. Adjusting the power valve definitely helped a lot. The bike had a lot more smoother power delivery than it had previously had the day before. And so I was feeling a lot better, and I told Chris that I wanted to stay on this small little hardpack area over by where we were staying, because the previous day we did a couple of trails, and those trails were just a little bit too sandy for me. I've always hated riding in the sand, but especially on a brand new bike that I still am getting used to, it was not a very good mix. So I was feeling a lot better, ripping around like third, sometimes fourth gear. Not very fast, just getting used to the power band and kind of pushing myself past my own limits and just getting used to the bike. At the same time, my friend was teaching his wife how to ride the XR. So she was learning how to ride while I was basically relearning how to ride. Ooh, look at this thing. This is a nice car. Old Corvette. Nice. Stinky Corvette. So I was getting a lot more used to the bike and kind of how it felt under me, and getting used to that power curve because it's so much different. But it was definitely a night and day difference from the previous day's ride. So I was feeling really good about it. But there was still that thing in the back of my mind wondering if I got too much bike. Did I upgrade to a too much bike than what I'm actually ready for? You know, I'm over here thinking maybe I do need to get a trail bike, like a 125 or a 150. So we were all hanging out, and I asked my friend if I could ride the XR around, and he said, yeah, sure. So I hopped on the XR, and it was so funny because, keep in mind, the XR is the same bike that I used to ride. My bike was just a little bit newer, but it's pretty much exactly the same bike. So I'm very used to how that bike handles and just the nuances of that bike. And so I get on it and I start ripping around the same area that we were ripping around, and I'm like in 4th gear, trying to go, you know, going into 5th, and like sitting there wondering to myself, like, where's the power? And also keep in mind, this bike was bored bigger than my old bike, so it technically was a little bit bigger CC than my old bike. But it just, jumping straight from my dirt bike to this XR, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing has like 0 guts. There was a little hill that I was kind of going up. It was like a little tabletop and then a little hill, and I felt like I was just like, my wrist was cocked backwards trying to get more power out of this little red bike, and I was like, oh my god, this thing's gutless. And I'm like, oh, this is why I upgraded. So it was a nice reminder of like what I came from. Just the power difference between those two bikes is night and day difference. And so it was actually really refreshing to get on the XR and feel like how gutless it was, and basically give me the confidence to know, like, yes, upgrading was a good choice, and I just need to stick with my current bike and just keep practicing. The one thing that I'm gonna need to adjust on my bike somehow, some way, is the clutch, because that clutch is so sensitive that it's like stupid, especially if you like change between bikes. So if you go from like this bike to that bike, or the XR to that bike, you like barely even think about letting the clutch out and the bike stalls. It is so touchy, and I don't know if that's like just a bike, like that bike, or if that's like a motocross thing, or like I don't know, but it was so touchy that if you're not like on the throttle ready to go, as soon as you even start to barely creep that clutch out, the bike is gonna stall flat on its face. Even my friend and Chris, who are both very experienced riders, they say that clutch is absolutely crazy. Once you get used to it, like anything you ride, once you get used to that zone, you know, where you start letting the clutch out, then I was able to ride it fine without stalling. I did feel like it got touchier as the bike got hotter, because at the end of the day, I didn't even let the clutch out and it stalled. So I don't know. There's some things to still work on with that bike, but it's a really cool bike. I am a little bummed that the plastics are already scratched, but I mean, it's inevitable. I'm not too worried about it. I can always get new ones, you know? And that was another thing I reminded myself when I was like feeling down on myself about my dirt bike. I had to remind myself that when I bought this Rebel 6 months ago, I was terrified of it. I was scared to do 30 miles an hour, and 6 months later, I'm zipping through traffic, doing 80 plus on the freeways, you know? So I had to remind myself that, like, you're not just gonna hop on a bike and instantly be really good at riding it, especially something so different, like a 2-stroke versus a 4-stroke. So I have to give myself a little bit of grace and remind myself that I really hope the audio turns out okay on this video, because that'd be a super big bummer if my microphone didn't work, or if it's just like super windy and you can't hear anything. I recorded a video a couple of weeks ago with my CARDO. I just do a voice recording on my phone and then just talk into my CARDO, and then that's how I do videos. I don't do it often like that. But it sucked because the video going to the place I was going to, it was okay, it was fine. It was a little hard because sometimes the CARDO doesn't pick up my voice. It's just whatever frequency my voice is. The CARDO, like, it'll cut off the beginning and the end of my sentences, and so my sentences are really choppy, but when it does pick up my voice, it's really clear. So anyway, I must have turned the CARDO off, because when I started voice recording again, the entire recording was just wind noise. And I was so bummed. I was like, dang it, like, this entire video is wasted because I can't even, like, do a raw sound video of the engine because it's literally just all wind noise. So that was a bummer.